Introduction. Friends, if you're in the mood for an emotional roller coaster that blends love, longing, sacrifice, and second chances, then you absolutely need to hear about the romantic drama I Love You Forever, 2024. This film is winning hearts all over, and if you're someone who enjoys powerful storytelling with a touch of heartbreak and hope, you're in for something truly special. And hey, if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe, because we bring you the latest and most exciting updates from the world of films, especially those you don't want to miss. In today's video, we're going to talk in full detail about I Love You Forever, what this movie is all about, what makes it so unique, and most importantly, where and how you can watch it. We'll tell you everything from the available streaming platforms to the satellite channels airing it, so you won't have to search around. If you're wondering whether it's available for rent, part of a subscription, or even playing in select theaters, we've got all that information coming up. But that's not all. We'll also take a deep dive into the film's technical department, how it was crafted visually and emotionally. We'll talk about the cinematography that paints each scene with mood and memory, the editing that paces the story just right, and the music that holds your heart in every frame. The soundtrack of I Love You Forever is something truly special, with songs that don't just support the film, but become part of its emotional core. You'll also learn about the film's pre-production journey, how the concept was born, how the cast was finalized, and how the script went through its creative evolution. We'll take you through the filming process, the locations used, the direction style, and how the production team brought this deeply emotional story to life. Then we'll cover post-production, how the film was shaped, polished, and readied for the audience. We'll even touch on the budget and box office collection, so you get a complete picture of how the film performed. Of course, what's a romantic drama without a beautiful story? I'll be giving you a small but powerful review of the storyline, enough to spark your curiosity without giving away spoilers. You'll get a taste of what makes this story worth watching, why the characters feel real, and how the film touches on themes of enduring love, personal loss, and the kind of moments that change people forever. And let's not forget the star cast. We'll talk about each actor's performance, what role they played, and how convincingly they brought their characters to life. From lead roles to supporting characters, we'll highlight who stood out, what kind of chemistry they shared, and why the casting played a big part in the film's emotional impact. We'll also share with you some fascinating behind-the-scenes facts. Did you know the film had to reshoot its ending after early test screenings? Or that one of the actors learned a new skill just to make a scene more authentic? These little things make I Love You Forever more than just a film. They make it a passion project filled with dedication. So friends, I invite you to stay with us till the very end of this video, because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly why I Love You Forever is a movie you absolutely shouldn't miss. Let's begin this journey into a film that promises to stay with you long after the credits roll. The story of I Love You Forever begins like a gentle wave, calm, comforting, but with an undercurrent of something deeper waiting to surface. It starts in a small coastal town where we meet Ethan, a soft-spoken illustrator trying to rebuild his life after a tragic loss. He's not looking for love. He's not looking for anything, really. He just wants peace, routine, and silence. That is, until Ava walks into his life. A writer with a spark in her eyes and a past she's keeping hidden, Ava stumbles into Ethan's world quite literally, an accidental meeting at a local bookshop that sets off a chain of moments too perfect to be coincidence. But this isn't your typical love story. The narrative plays a trick on you. It pulls you in with a familiar romantic setup, then slowly begins to shift the ground beneath your feet. The film doesn't move in a straight line. It dances back and forth between the present and the past, using flashbacks that are triggered by objects, places, or even a line of dialogue. We begin to see Ethan and Ava's connection as something layered, something written long before they officially met. Time becomes less of a timeline and more of a feeling, memories bleeding into moments, dreams interrupting reality. A major turning point hits when Ethan discovers a collection of old letters buried in the attic of his cottage, letters written decades ago, but eerily echoing conversations he's had with Ava. This is where the film leans into its more mysterious, almost spiritual edge. Is their love new, or has it happened before? Is this a second chance, or a continuation of something left unfinished? The story toys with the idea of fate, not in a cliché way, but in a haunting, beautiful one that makes you question how much control we really have over the people we meet and the love we feel. The conflict isn't loud. There are no villains, no dramatic shouting matches in the rain. Instead, the tension builds from within the characters. Their fear of losing again, their hesitation to trust what feels too good, too soon. Ava's past, in particular, becomes a slow-revealing puzzle. We learn that she's battling a serious illness, something she hasn't told Ethan. She doesn't want pity. She doesn't want to be someone's burden. But love, inconvenient as it is, refuses to let either of them stay guarded. As we move toward the final act, the film becomes more poetic, more reflective. There's a scene near the end, simple, quiet, but devastatingly effective, where Ethan reads Ava's unpublished novel. In it, he finds every feeling they've shared, every moment they never spoke aloud. It's her goodbye, but also her promise. And just when you think the film is about to break your heart beyond repair, it offers something unexpected. Not a traditional happy ending, but something more honest. The narrative doesn't follow a clean arc. It rises and dips like memory itself, familiar, fragmented, sometimes out of order, but always emotionally true. The structure mirrors real life, the way love doesn't always come when we're ready, the way stories don't always end when they're supposed to, and the way some people can live in your heart long after they're gone. I Love You Forever isn't just a film you watch, it's a story you feel in waves, each one pulling you a little deeper. In I Love You Forever, the real magic doesn't just come from the plot. It pulses through the characters, who feel less like scripted roles and more like people you've known your whole life. Let's start with Ethan. At first glance, he's the classic introverted romantic lead. Quiet, solitary, almost invisible in a crowd. But the more time you spend with him, the more layers start to peel back. He's not just mourning the loss of a past love. He's grieving the version of himself that believed in new beginnings. His growth isn't loud or dramatic. It's in the way he starts letting sunlight into his closed-off world, the way he begins painting again with color instead of just charcoal, the way he stops saying maybe later and starts saying yes to things that scare him. He evolves, not because someone rescues him, but because someone dares to see him, and he begins to see himself again. Then there's Ava, a whirlwind in human form. At first, she's all charm and mystery, the kind of character who hides deep truths behind a clever smile and one-liners that sound like they came from a novel. But beneath that wit is a woman running out of time. She knows it, but she doesn't let the world know it. Ava's arc is heartbreaking in the most graceful way. She doesn't want to be remembered for her illness. She wants to be remembered for living fully in the moment. Watching her push through fear, fall in love without guarantees, and still protect Ethan from the weight of her reality is the emotional core of the film. She's not perfect. She's flawed, impulsive, guarded, but that's what makes her unforgettable. What makes both characters compelling is that they don't exist in isolation. Their connection is the catalyst that forces them to confront everything they've avoided. Ethan begins to dream again because Ava shows him how to hope without conditions. Ava begins to trust again because Ethan listens without needing to fix. Their relationship isn't just about romance. It's about two incomplete souls recognizing something familiar in each other. Their bond grows through quiet moments, a late-night walk, a shared song, the silence between lines of dialogue. Every interaction carries weight because every moment feels borrowed. Supporting characters don't fade into the background either. Ethan's sister, Claire, might only have a handful of scenes, but she adds so much warmth and grounding. She's the voice of reason, the gentle nudge forward, the one who sees what Ethan can't. And then there's Michael, Ava's best friend, whose protective presence and subtle heartbreak add another layer of complexity. You realize he's also in love with her, but he never acts on it. His love is silent, selfless, and quietly devastating. Each character, even the ones with limited screen time, contributes something vital. They're not props to move the story along. They shape it, shift it, and deepen it. Motivations aren't handed to the audience on a platter. They're revealed in glances, in choices, in conversations that say one thing but mean another. You're never told how they feel. You feel it with them. What's most beautiful about the character development in I Love You Forever is that no one ends the story the way they began. Ethan becomes brave enough to love without fearing loss. Ava learns that vulnerability can be a kind of strength. Their arcs don't wrap up neatly with a bow, but they transform, like people do when they collide with the right souls at the right or wrong time. These aren't just characters in a movie. They're reminders that growth isn't always big or dramatic. Sometimes, it's just finding the courage to say goodbye, knowing that love, real love, doesn't need forever to be unforgettable. When it comes to performances in I Love You Forever, the cast doesn't just act. They breathe, ache, and love in a way that makes you forget you're watching a film. The leads don't merely carry the story. They become the heartbeat of it. First up, the spotlight shines on the actor playing Ethan. He's not flashy, not theatrical. He works in subtle movements, quiet pauses, and eyes that seem to carry 10 years of sadness and 10 more of silent hope. He doesn't say much in the first act, but that's the genius of it. You read every emotion on his face, without a single line being spoken. It's the kind of performance that doesn't shout for attention. It pulls you in and lets you discover it moment by moment. And then there's the actress playing Ava. She is fire wrapped in velvet. She enters the screen like a breath of fresh air in a room that's been closed too long, and from the first scene, you know you're watching something special. She plays Ava with this perfect balance of charm and restraint, laughing easily, teasing naturally, but always with something quietly breaking underneath. What makes her performance so powerful is that she never asks for your sympathy. She plays Ava like someone who has already made peace with her pain, and it's up to you to catch the clues in her eyes, her hesitation, the way she leans just a little longer in moments that matter. Her final scenes, especially the one where she lets Ethan read her manuscript, are the kind of emotional gut punches you don't see coming, but feel all the way through. The chemistry between the two leads is lightning in a bottle. It's not loud or overly romantic, it's lived in, believable, almost awkward at times, like two people who aren't sure if what they're feeling is real or just a beautiful coincidence. And that makes it feel even more real. Their quiet glances, stolen smiles, the way they sit beside each other in silence without needing to fill it with words, it's magic that doesn't try to be magic. You believe them as strangers. You believe them as lovers. And most importantly, you believe them as two people who save each other without trying to. Now, let's talk about the supporting cast. Every one of them brings something essential to the emotional fabric of the film. Ethan's sister, Claire, is played with such grounded warmth that even in her short screen time, she feels like the solid anchor to his drifting heart. Her scenes offer a quiet stability, a contrast to the storm brewing within Ethan. She's not just the sibling character, she's the one who sees the truth before anyone else does, and her gentle prodding adds depth without ever stealing focus. And then there's Michael, Ava's best friend. He's the unsung hero of the story, a character who could have easily been overlooked or underwritten, but thanks to a deeply thoughtful performance, he becomes unforgettable. Michael carries the burden of unspoken love. You see it in the way he watches Ava when she's not looking, the way he smiles too quickly, and the way he stands back when he wants to step in. His restraint is a performance all its own, and it hurts, in the best way. Even minor characters, like the owner of the local bookshop or the neighbor who offers unsolicited advice, are played with care and realism. Nobody feels like a filler. Everyone matters. Everyone fits. The emotional depth of the film is not just in the story, it's in how every actor chooses to live inside their role, fully and fearlessly. You won't find dramatic Oscar bait monologues here. You'll find something harder to pull off, truth. The kind of truth that shows up in awkward silences, in shaking hands, in the breaking of a voice during a goodbye. The cast doesn't just tell you what the characters are feeling. They let you feel it alongside them. They make you care. They make you hurt. And they make you believe that love, even the kind that doesn't last forever, can still be everything. From the very first frame of I Love You Forever, you can feel the director's hand guiding everything, not with a heavy grip, but with a quiet precision that shapes the entire emotional landscape. The tone is immediately intimate, soft, and deeply atmospheric, like a love letter whispered instead of shouted. This isn't a film that hurries to impress. It breathes. It lingers. It takes its time because the director knows the power of stillness, of silence, of allowing the audience to feel rather than just watch. Every scene is soaked in a certain kind of warmth, the lighting never too harsh, the colors never too loud. It's a film that glows. The pacing is delicate, like turning pages in a diary that wasn't meant to be found. There's a rhythm to the storytelling that doesn't follow the typical three-act formula. Instead, it flows like memory, moments bleeding into each other, time skipping forward and backward without warning, yet never leaving you confused. This nonlinear approach is one of the director's boldest choices, and it works because it mirrors how love is remembered, not as a list of events, but as flashes of feeling. The director builds this dreamlike tone not just through editing, but through the way scenes are framed and transitions are handled. A shot might begin in the present and end in the past, all in one smooth motion. A walk on the beach becomes a childhood memory. A conversation under starlight becomes an echo of a promise, once made and forgotten. Shot composition is where the direction truly shines. You'll notice how often characters are shown with space around them. Room to breathe, but also room to feel isolated. When Ethan is alone, he's framed with distance, surrounded by empty space, his solitude visually emphasized. But as his connection with Ava grows, the shots tighten. They begin to share space, share focus. One of the most striking visuals is a recurring shot motif, two characters sitting side by side, reflected in glass or water. It's simple, but it says everything about duality, about presence and absence, about the blurry line between reality and what could have been. The director also uses sound, or the lack of it, in clever, emotional ways. In moments of grief or inner turmoil, the music fades and all you hear is ambient noise, wind, footsteps, breath. Then, suddenly, the score returns not to guide the emotion but to catch it like a wave. It never tells you what to feel, it meets you where you already are. That restraint, that trust in the audience's emotional intelligence is rare. Even the way dialogue is delivered feels guided by a clear vision. It's never overwritten. The conversations feel like real talk between people who know what they want to say, but can't always find the courage. The director lets the pauses speak, lets the unsaid carry weight. You get the sense that every line was shaped with care, spoken not just for exposition, but as part of a rhythm, like poetry folded into everyday life. Visually, the director keeps things grounded but elegant. There are no over-the-top camera tricks or distracting flourishes. But when the film does stretch into something more stylized, like a slow-motion flashback or a dream sequence, it feels earned, not indulgent. One standout scene uses a long continuous take, following Ava through a quiet street at dusk, reflecting her inner turmoil without a single word. The camera glides behind her like a ghost, and you feel everything she's trying to hide. The director's overall vision blends emotional realism with quiet cinematic beauty. This isn't about grand spectacles or flashy scenes. It's about texture, emotional texture. You feel the wind through the trees, the way the light shifts through a window, the sound of laughter that turns to silence. The film doesn't shout. It doesn't plead. It simply holds you close and lets you feel everything it has to offer. And that kind of direction? That's not easy to pull off. It's intentional. It's intimate. And it's unforgettable. The cinematography in I Love You Forever doesn't just capture scenes, it captures emotion. Every frame feels like a painting dipped in memory, carefully composed to tell a story far beyond the dialogue. From the first wide shot of the windswept coast to the final close-up of a single tear rolling down a cheek, the camera becomes a character in its own right. You don't just see what the characters are going through, you feel it because of how the camera invites you into their inner world. Camera angles are used not just for aesthetics, but for storytelling. When Ethan is first introduced, he's often shot from a distance, dwarfed by his surroundings, his loneliness quietly underlined by wide, open framing. He's placed in corners of rooms, often with a wall or windows separating him from the world. This visual language says everything about his emotional state without a single word. Contrast that with how Ava is introduced: tight shots, slightly off-center framing, suggesting both her emotional complexity and the energy she brings into Ethan's life. As the story progresses and their connection deepens, the framing subtly shifts. Suddenly, they're shot together in centered, balanced frames. The camera begins to mirror their growing emotional synchronicity. Lighting plays a huge role in setting the tone. The film leans into soft, natural light that bathes scenes in a golden warmth, especially during moments of connection and intimacy. You get those dreamy, sun-drenched afternoons where the light dances off dust particles in the air and you feel like you're watching two souls suspended in time. But then the mood shifts. In scenes of emotional tension or uncertainty, the lighting becomes cooler, shadows stretch longer, and the world around the characters feels just a little dimmer. One unforgettable moment uses candlelight alone to illuminate a late-night conversation between Ethan and Ava. The flames flicker between them, casting moving shadows on their faces, as if reflecting the instability of the emotions they're trying to contain. It's simple, but breathtaking. Framing is used with an almost poetic sense of rhythm. The cinematographer knows exactly when to close in and when to pull away. During moments of vulnerability, the camera lingers, close-ups that hold just a beat longer than expected, showing the tremble in a lip or the hesitation in someone's eyes. You start noticing hands fidgeting, eyes darting, breaths being held. These choices make every scene feel more alive, more human. There's a recurring use of reflections, mirrors, windows, even puddles after the rain. Characters are often shown in partial reflection, symbolizing their inner fragmentation or duality. One particular scene features Ava writing in a journal while her reflection appears beside her, slightly blurred, as if representing the version of herself she's trying to hold on to. It's a visual metaphor that says more than pages of script ever could. There are standout moments that feel iconic. A beach scene at dusk, where the camera pulls back slowly to reveal the vast emptiness around two people sitting side by side, makes the viewer feel both the comfort of companionship and the looming fear of impermanence. Another moment, entirely in silhouette, shows Ethan watching Ava walk away into the light of a setting sun, a shot so perfectly composed it almost doesn't feel real. The lines, the depth, the colors, all come together to make you hold your breath. Tension is built through subtle shifts in movement. The camera doesn't whip or cut aggressively. It glides, it hovers. When emotions are high, the steadiness wavers just enough to let you feel the instability. There's a hallway scene where Ethan discovers something devastating, and the camera follows him with a shaky handheld style that makes your heart pound, not because of the movement itself, but because it contrasts so sharply with the calm, composed style seen before. Atmosphere is everything in this film, and the cinematography is the architect. You can feel the chill in the morning air, the humidity of a summer night, the silence of a room after someone leaves it. Even the rain doesn't just fall, it feels like it soaks through the screen. The cinematographer doesn't go for spectacle, but for intimacy. Each shot feels like it was chosen with intention, not just to look beautiful, but to mean something. In this film, the camera sees everything, and it wants you to see what really matters. The editing in I Love You Forever is like a well-written love letter. It knows exactly when to pause, when to breathe, and when to race forward with emotion. The film doesn't follow a linear, paint-by-number style. Instead, the editing takes a more poetic approach, letting the story unfold like a series of thoughts and feelings. Scenes are stitched together not just based on time, but on mood. A look in the present triggers a memory from the past. A line of dialogue echoes into the future. And somehow, even with these shifts in time and tone, the transitions feel seamless. You're never lost. You're floating along in the emotional current of the story. The pacing is a slow burn in the best possible way. It doesn't rush to get to the big moments. It lingers in the silences, the hesitations, the spaces between what's said and what's felt. There are entire scenes where nothing major happens, but the way they're edited keeps your attention locked in. A cup of coffee being poured, a letter being folded, a glance held just a second too long. These are the beats the film leans into. The editors clearly understood the rhythm of the characters' emotional journeys and built the structure of the film around that, rather than trying to force artificial momentum. But don't mistake this quiet pacing for a lack of energy. When the story needs to build tension or hit an emotional high, the tempo picks up with precision. There's a moment in the second act where Ethan discovers something about Ava's past. Suddenly, the calm dissolves and the editing reflects that emotional chaos. Shots come quicker. Cuts get sharper. Dialogue overlaps. Music swells and then drops out abruptly. You feel the rush of adrenaline, the confusion, the heartbreak, because the rhythm of the film shifts just when it needs to. It doesn't scream for your attention, but it tightens its grip. One of the most effective editing techniques used is the match cut, objects or gestures that carry over from one scene to the next, often linking two different timelines or emotional states. Ethan closing a door in the present cuts to Ava opening one in the past. A scene of Ava writing transitions into Ethan reading years later, in perfect sync. These transitions feel almost invisible at first, but they build a kind of emotional echo, connecting different parts of the story, like puzzle pieces slowly falling into place. There's also a beautiful rhythm in how quiet moments are spaced throughout the narrative. The editors aren't afraid of silence. In fact, they use it like a tool. After a heavy or emotionally charged scene, they'll let the next moment breathe. No music, minimal dialogue, just the sound of footsteps, wind, or waves. These pauses allow the audience to process, to settle, to feel. It's not a film that drowns you in nonstop drama. It lets things simmer, and that restraint makes every emotional peak hit harder. Montages are used sparingly, but when they arrive, they're powerful. One in particular, set halfway through the film, shows Ethan and Ava growing closer through little everyday things. It's edited like a memory. Soft fades, overlapping sound, snippets of laughter, hands brushing unfinished sentences. There's no need for exposition. The editing says everything. It's that kind of emotional shorthand that elevates the film's storytelling. Even the ending is edited with a sensitivity that sneaks up on you. Scenes begin to slow down. Shots linger just a little longer. You start to feel the weight of what's coming before it even arrives. The editors subtly guide you into that final emotional space without fanfare. And when the last scene cuts to black, it doesn't feel abrupt. It feels earned. In a film like this, where emotion drives everything, the editing becomes the invisible thread that pulls you through it. You don't always notice the cuts, the fades, the rhythm changes, but you feel them. They're what make the story flow not just logically, but emotionally. Every beat feels placed with care. Every moment feels like it matters. And that's when you know the editing is doing exactly what it should, shaping time not just for the plot, but for the heart. The soundtrack and score of I Love You Forever work like a secret language. Never too loud, never too obvious, but always there, quietly shaping how you feel, even if you don't realize it at first. From the opening scene, music doesn't just accompany the film, it becomes a part of its emotional DNA. You hear a soft piano in the background, almost like a whisper, as Ethan walks along the empty shore, and just like that, you're pulled into his inner world. The score never needs to shout because it understands the art of subtlety. It knows that the right note at the right moment can say more than a monologue. One of the most powerful tools the film uses is a recurring piano motif, a simple, four-note melody that returns again and again, each time with a slightly different emotion attached. The first time you hear it, it feels distant, almost hesitant, like someone remembering something they've tried to forget. But as the story unfolds and Ethan and Ava grow closer, that same motif becomes warmer, more full. By the time it plays in a scene where Ethan reads Ava's manuscript, it hits like a wave. Familiar, gentle, devastating. It's the kind of musical motif that sneaks into your memory and lingers long after the credits roll. There's a delicate blend of original score and carefully curated songs throughout the film, and each one feels perfectly chosen for the emotional temperature of the scene. Acoustic tracks with soft vocals play during quiet moments of intimacy, while strings take over in scenes where emotion runs high. But the music never overpowers the story. It doesn't tell you how to feel. It listens, then responds. You'll notice that the most emotional scenes aren't necessarily the ones with the most music. In fact, silence is one of the score's boldest choices. There are moments when everything drops out, no dialogue, no sound effects, just silence. One scene in particular stands out. Ethan sits alone, trying to decide whether to open a letter Ava left for him. The camera holds on him. The background is quiet, and the silence stretches. It's uncomfortable. It's powerful. And then, just when you think the moment might snap, the piano motif returns, but now it's slower, softer, and paired with a single, distant violin. That restraint is what makes the music work so well. It never pushes too hard. It waits. A standout piece in the film's score is used during a nighttime montage where Ava and Ethan dance under fairy lights in her backyard. The music here isn't grand or sweeping. It's a gentle instrumental, somewhere between a lullaby and a love song, with delicate strings, a few piano notes, and the faintest hint of guitar. What's magical is that the music seems to mimic their movement. It rises when they laugh. It quiets when they stare into each other's eyes. It moves with them, like a partner in the dance. You can't separate the scene from the sound. It's one experience. As the film approaches its final moments, the score begins to shift. The familiar motifs return, but now they're layered with more instruments. Cello, ambient tones, sometimes even echoing vocals, like a ghost of the past woven into the music. It creates this feeling that the story is coming full circle, that everything you've heard before now means something more. The music deepens as the characters do. And it's not just about melody. Even the sound design, the ambient tones beneath the score, plays a role. Raindrops, waves, wind, pages turning, distant birdsong. These sounds blend into the music so well you don't always notice them, but they give the soundtrack a textured, organic feel. It's not a digital score layered on top of a film. It's music that seems to grow from the story itself. What's truly special is how the soundtrack doesn't just support the narrative, it becomes a memory machine. By the end of the film, certain pieces of music feel like emotional triggers. You hear a note, and it pulls you back to a moment earlier in the film. A laugh, a kiss, a goodbye. That's the kind of storytelling only music can do. It doesn't need to explain. It just plays and you feel it. Every note, every silence, every swell, it's not just background. It's part of the heartbeat. I Love You Forever doesn't just tell a love story. It unwraps a collection of deeply personal, often unspoken truths about the human experience. At its heart, this film is about love, yes, but not just the kind found in candlelit dinners or whispered declarations. It's about love that endures through silence, through absence, through time itself. The title may sound like a classic romance, but the story goes much deeper. One of the film's most powerful themes is impermanence. Everything in this film whispers the idea that nothing lasts forever, not time, not people, not even the strongest feelings, and yet, that fleeting nature doesn't lessen the value of what's shared. In fact, it makes every moment more meaningful. There's a quiet message here that something doesn't need to be permanent to matter. A love that ends can still be complete. A goodbye doesn't cancel out everything that came before it. It's a truth that hurts, but also heals. Grief is another central thread woven through nearly every scene. Ethan isn't just recovering from loss, he's stuck in it. He's frozen, emotionally paused at a point in time when everything went wrong. The film doesn't dramatize grief. It lives in the small things. A coat he won't throw away, a conversation he rewrites in his head, a smile he's forgotten how to give. Grief, in this story, is quiet, persistent, and deeply human. It's not just about missing someone, it's about losing parts of yourself with them. And when Ava arrives, it's not her love that heals Ethan. It's the way she helps him reconnect with who he used to be. The film gently asks, How do we move on without letting go completely? How do we carry the people we've lost without letting the weight bury us? Another theme that pulses beneath the surface is time, not just in the ticking clock sense, but as a force that shapes love, memory, and meaning. The nonlinear structure of the film isn't just a stylistic choice. It reflects the way we experience time emotionally. We don't remember things in order. We relive them based on smells, sounds, conversations, dreams. The story moves like memory, sometimes clear, sometimes blurry, always unpredictable. This fragmented approach reinforces one of the film's most poetic questions. Is love tied to the moment it happens, or can it live outside of time? Can two souls be connected across timelines, even if their paths don't run parallel? The film also explores the idea of vulnerability, real, raw vulnerability. Ava's character challenges the romantic cliché of being saved or fixed by love. She's facing a quiet battle of her own, but she hides it, not out of pride, but out of fear that her illness will define her. Her struggle isn't just physical, it's emotional. She wants to be seen for who she is, not what she's fighting. The film doesn't frame her as a tragic heroine. It shows her as a whole person, flawed, funny, brilliant, and brave in her own way. And through her, we get another layered theme: the courage it takes to open your heart when you know time is limited. Creativity and memory also play a subtle but strong role. Ethan is an illustrator, Ava a writer. They're both storytellers, in their own right, and through their art, they process pain, preserve joy, and leave pieces of themselves behind. One of the most emotional scenes in the film involves a story Ava writes, a fictional version of her time with Ethan. It becomes more than a narrative. It's a gift, a confession, a final act of love. The film suggests that storytelling is a way to hold on to people, to make sense of things we can't explain. That art isn't just expression, it's survival. And finally, the film wrestles with the idea of letting go, not as a defeat, but as an act of love. The characters learn that to truly care for someone is to allow them to grow, even if it means growing apart. There's a bittersweet beauty in knowing when to hold on and when to release. This message lingers long after the film ends. It reminds us that real love isn't about possession. It's about presence. It's about choosing someone, not forever, but fully for as long as you can. These themes don't feel forced. They unfold gently, wrapped in dialogue, in glances, in moments of silence. You don't get hit over the head with messages. You absorb them like a slow tide rising around your feet. And when the film finally fades to black, what stays with you isn't just the story, it's the way it made you think about your own loves, your own losses, your own quiet, unforgettable moments that slipped through time and still echo inside you. Now, you wouldn't expect a film like I Love You Forever, an emotional, grounded romantic drama, to have much going on in the visual effects department. But here's the surprise. It does, and it's done in a way so subtle, so perfectly integrated into the fabric of the film that you might not even notice it at first. And that's exactly the point. The visual effects here aren't meant to dazzle or scream for attention. They're meant to disappear into the story, becoming a seamless part of the atmosphere, the emotion, and the memory-like quality that defines the entire film. The CGI in this movie isn't about flying cars, monsters, or epic battle sequences. It's about emotion. It's about texture. It's about enhancing the slightly surreal quality of memory, love, and grief. Take, for instance, the way time works in the film. The transitions between past and present aren't just simple cuts. They often use VFX to blend moments together in a way that feels like falling through someone's thoughts. One moment, Ava and Ethan are sitting in a quiet cafe, and as the camera circles around them, the cafe fades into a memory of them walking through a rainy street from years ago. The street glistens just a little too perfectly. The reflections ripple like they're made of memory, not water. That's not just editing. It's visual effects being used like a paintbrush, blending scenes together in a dreamlike wash of feeling. Weather effects are another sneaky highlight. Rain plays a major symbolic role throughout the film, appearing at turning points in the story. But this isn't your average staged rain machine. The raindrops sparkle a little more than they should. The way they hit the glass, the way they ripple in puddles, it feels heightened, just enough to make you question if what you're seeing is real or a projection of someone's memory. It's technically enhanced, but never artificial. It doesn't pull you out of the story. It draws you deeper into it. Lighting augmentation is another quiet but effective use of CGI. Golden hour scenes glow with a radiance that feels slightly exaggerated, but still believable. It's as if the light is coming from within the characters, not just from the sun. There's a particular sequence during a flashback where Ava is writing by the window, and the light passing through the curtain turns everything a soft rose gold. That's digital magic, but it's used with such restraint and taste that it feels like the memory of a moment rather than the moment itself. The visual effects team clearly understood that the story lives in emotion, so they used CGI to emphasize feeling instead of spectacle. There are also some practical effects in the film, small, almost invisible touches. The use of in-camera reflections, subtle color filters, and real-world manipulation of light and shadow all give the film a handcrafted feel. In fact, much of what you think might be CGI is actually a blend of practical effects enhanced digitally. A journal flipping pages in the wind, an old photograph that slowly fades out while the character stares at it, a candle flickering out in slow motion. These details are likely done with a combination of on-set tricks and digital polishing. And that's what makes them work so well. You never stop to think, that was CG. You just feel like you're watching someone's heart unfold on screen. Even the more obvious digital effects, like the starry sky that Ava and Ethan lie under during one of their most vulnerable conversations, are handled with restraint. The sky looks a little too vivid, the stars a little too perfectly aligned. But instead of distracting, it creates a feeling of wonder. It doesn't feel like the real world. It feels like their world, their shared little universe. That's the kind of digital effect that elevates storytelling. It's not there to impress. It's there to belong. Overall, the visual effects in I Love You Forever are like a perfectly tuned background harmony. You don't always notice them consciously, but if they weren't there, you'd feel the difference. They help memory feel more like a painting than a photograph. They help grief feel like mist, and love like a soft glow that never quite fades. They enhance everything without stealing the spotlight. In a film where emotions are the real special effects, the visuals simply follow suit. Quiet, beautiful, and absolutely unforgettable. In I Love You Forever, the set design and locations aren't just background scenery. They're living, breathing parts of the story, almost like supporting characters with their own emotional arcs. Everything you see on screen, from the tiny chipped mug in Ethan's apartment to the sweeping hilltop view where Ava and Ethan share their most intimate moments, is soaked in meaning. The world around them doesn't just reflect where they are physically, it echoes where they are emotionally. Let's start with Ethan's apartment. It's not glossy or overstyled. It's lived in. You can feel the silence hanging in the air. The muted walls, the worn-out couch, the half-finished drawings pinned carelessly to the wall. Each detail speaks volumes. You instantly know this is a space suspended in time. It's a museum of memory, a shelter for someone stuck between the past and whatever might come next. The props here aren't flashy, but they're perfect. A dusty typewriter, a sketchpad with frayed edges, a broken lamp he never bothered to fix. These things tell you more about Ethan's grief and isolation than dialogue ever could. Then we have Ava's world, which is in stark contrast. Her spaces are vibrant, warm, softly cluttered with books and plants and sunlight. The cafe where she writes, the vintage bookstore she frequents, even her apartment with its mismatched furniture and lavender curtains, they all feel like extensions of her spirit. Wherever Ava goes, life seems to bloom a little. And that's no accident. The production design uses her surroundings to highlight how she brings color back into Ethan's gray existence. It's not just clever design, it's storytelling through space. One standout location in the film is a lakeside cabin they escape to midway through the story. The setting is absolutely stunning. Still waters, pine trees swaying gently, golden light filtering through the leaves. It's peaceful, almost untouched, and it acts as a sanctuary. But look closer and you'll see the details that elevate the scene. The wooden dock with one missing plank, the creaky screen door, the childhood drawings still tacked to the cabin walls. These aren't random choices. They make the space feel real, like someone's forgotten haven, rediscovered just in time. The city plays its own role, too. Unlike most romantic dramas set in picture-perfect metropolitan dreamscapes, I Love You Forever shows us a more grounded version. Rainy backstreets, neon-lit diners, abandoned train stations, quiet bookstores tucked between apartment blocks. Each location has texture, personality, and a gentle sadness that fits the story's bittersweet tone. Even passing alleyways and graffiti-covered underpasses feel poetic, like visual representations of memory fragments. And when the story moves to Ava's childhood home in the third act, the design shifts again. The house is filled with nostalgia, floral wallpaper, old record players, childhood photographs slightly faded by time. It's intimate, familiar, and hauntingly beautiful. The attention to detail here makes you feel like you've stepped into someone's personal history. But the real genius of the set design lies in how it evolves with the characters. As Ethan starts to reconnect with the world, his apartment begins to change subtly. Curtains pulled open, sunlight pouring in, Ava's scarf left casually on a chair, new sketches forming on his desk. The world around him mirrors his emotional journey. And that's what makes the production design so powerful in this film. It's not decorative, it's dynamic. It transforms along with the characters, quietly reinforcing every shift in mood, every beat of the story. What's especially impressive is how nothing feels overly polished. There's a natural messiness to the spaces, a lived-in feeling that's hard to fake. Whether it's the chaotic kitchen counter or the stack of unopened letters on the hallway table, every object looks like it belongs. The choices are specific, personal, and rooted in story. You never feel like you're on a movie set. You feel like you've stepped into someone's life. In a film where every glance and silence carries emotional weight, the locations and sets provide the perfect backdrop for it all to unfold. They're not just places. They're memories, dreams, and reflections captured in paint, light, and shadow. And they make the world of I Love You Forever feel not only real, but unforgettable. The dialogue in I Love You Forever is like poetry spoken in the language of real people. It doesn't try too hard to be clever, and that's exactly why it works. Every word feels like it's been lived in, like the characters aren't just reading lines but are actually thinking and feeling them in the moment. Whether it's a quiet conversation over coffee or an emotionally charged confession at 2 a.m., the script manages to hit that rare sweet spot between lyrical and natural. One of the most compelling things about the writing is how it balances restraint with raw honesty. The characters don't always say what they feel directly, but you feel the weight of what's left unsaid. When Ava looks at Ethan and says, "You can't fix what never let itself break," it's not just a line. It's a wound, a truth, a challenge. It tells you everything about her emotional state and the barriers she's built around her heart. There are moments where the script leans into pure emotional vulnerability, but never in a way that feels manipulative. When Ethan says, "I kept drawing you, not because I missed you, but because I couldn't remember your face when I didn't," it hits like a punch and a hug at the same time. It's lines like these that feel carved out of real pain, shaped by real love, and spoken like secrets the characters didn't mean to let slip. The film also knows how to use silence and subtext. There's an entire scene in the second act where Ava and Ethan talk about weather patterns. Yes, weather. And it's actually about trust, grief, and regret. The script layers meaning in ways that reward you for paying attention. You can read between every word and find something new each time. And yet, it never feels overly symbolic or artsy for the sake of it. The conversations sound like people who are trying to find their way through messy emotions with whatever words they can grab onto. The dialogue isn't always polished, and that's the point. There are stumbles, awkward pauses, interrupted thoughts. In a confrontation scene, Ethan begins to say, "I should have," but never finishes the sentence. Ava doesn't ask him to. That unfinished sentence says more than any monologue could. The script trusts the audience to listen, to observe, to feel the tension in what's not spoken aloud. And there are moments of humor too. Light, dry, a little unexpected. Like when Ava finds one of Ethan's old drawings and teases, "So you were born with feelings and no sense of proportion." It's warm, playful, human. The film never forgets that these are people who laugh as much as they cry, who connect through sarcasm and small talk just as much as soul-bearing declarations. It's this emotional range in the writing that makes the story feel so rich. You get everything: heartbreak, awkwardness, hope, and even a little absurdity. The dialogue feels like it was written by someone who's not just a writer, but a listener, someone who's paid attention to how people talk when they're afraid, when they're falling in love, when they're trying not to cry, or when they finally stop pretending. There are a few lines that stay with you long after the credits roll. One of them, whispered during the final flashback, is simple and devastating. "I didn't know how to love you until I'd already lost the chance." It's the kind of line that sneaks up on you, buries itself in your chest, and just sits there. Not because it's poetic, but because it feels true. The script isn't showy, but it knows exactly when to deliver a gut punch, and exactly when to let a character just exist in silence. Whether it's a conversation about the past, a fight in the rain, or a single line scrawled in a notebook, every word feels earned. Every exchange matters. And that's the kind of writing that doesn't just tell a story, it leaves you carrying pieces of it long after it's over. I Love You forever walks into the romance drama genre like it's been here before, but then it quietly takes everything you expect and turns it just a few degrees sideways. On the surface, it might look like your typical lost love returns kind of story, but the way it's told and the emotions it chooses to spotlight make it feel like something else entirely. It doesn't just follow genre conventions, it studies them, understands them, and then reshapes them into something more layered, more personal, and way more emotionally intense than you'd expect. Let's start with what you might be expecting. A dramatic breakup? Yes. Emotional flashbacks? Definitely. A final act confession in the rain? Oh yes. But here's where it gets clever. It doesn't lean into those moments with the usual melodrama. Instead of swelling violins and teary monologues, you get quiet breakdowns in grocery store parking lots, awkward silences at dinner tables, and arguments that feel more like therapy sessions than theatrical showdowns. It's drama, but drama that feels honest and lived in, like it was pulled from someone's journal instead of a screenwriter's notebook. What really sets this film apart in the romance genre is how it handles emotional time travel. The story is linear in structure, but the way it plays with memory and emotional callbacks makes it feel layered like a psychological thriller. Except instead of solving a murder, the characters are trying to solve their own hearts. You're not just watching two people fall in or out of love. You're watching them revisit every version of themselves across time and figure out how they got so lost in the first place. There's suspense, not in the traditional what will happen next sense, but in the emotional kind. You're constantly asking, will they say what they need to say? Will they be honest this time? Will they let go or hold on? And that emotional suspense keeps you locked in more than any plot twist ever could. Now, about humor. This movie doesn't try to be funny, but it understands that real relationships have awkwardness, irony, and small, laugh-out-loud moments of ridiculous honesty. A burnt toast, a missed call, a sarcastic comment during a vulnerable scene. It's these micro-moments that add a natural rhythm to the heavier emotional beats. It's not slapstick. It's the kind of humor you chuckle at because it feels real. That's a rare balance in a genre that usually swings between overwrought drama or overly quirky banter. In terms of freshness, the film ditches the overused tropes like bad boy redemption arcs or grand airport chases. Instead, it focuses on emotional accountability. It's not about fixing someone, it's about healing yourself enough to show up fully for someone else. That's a genre twist that feels both modern and timeless. There's also something powerful about how the movie doesn't glamorize the romantic ideal. There are no perfect people, no perfect moments. Ava and Ethan mess up, say the wrong things, walk away when they shouldn't, and hesitate when they should leap. And yet, the story doesn't shame them. It understands them. That's where the genre execution shines the most. It's not about selling you a fantasy. It's about handing you something that looks a little more like your own story, your own regrets, your own what-ifs. Even when it flirts with cliché, it does so knowingly. then gently pivots away, like saying, "We know you've seen this before, but not quite like this." In the end, I Love You Forever respects the rules of its genre, but it doesn't feel trapped by them. It uses romance not as a formula, but as a framework to dig deeper into love's messiness, its fragility, and its resilience. And in doing that, it doesn't just follow genre expectations. It rewrites them quietly, emotionally, and with devastating precision. I Love You Forever doesn't shout its social commentary. It lets it simmer quietly beneath the surface, embedded in the choices its characters make, the environments they live in, and the emotional walls they've built up over time. It's not the kind of film that waves a flag or gives you a speech about modern society, but the way it handles themes like emotional vulnerability, gender roles, generational trauma, and the shifting nature of love in a hyper-connected yet emotionally disconnected world speaks volumes. What really stands out is how naturally these layers are woven into the story. The film doesn't pause to explain itself. Instead, it trusts you to pick up on what's happening around and beneath the romance. Ava, for example, is a woman who's not just navigating heartbreak, she's navigating expectations. The pressure to move on, to be emotionally strong without appearing cold, to be ambitious but also nurturing. Her struggle isn't exaggerated, but it's real and deeply familiar, especially for women trying to balance personal growth with emotional legacy. There's also a subtle but sharp take on masculinity through Ethan's character. He's creative, sensitive, full of emotional hesitation, and constantly fighting the idea that expressing vulnerability makes him weak. His emotional repression isn't just a character flaw, it's a reflection of what many men are taught to suppress. Watching him slowly unravel his inner conflict becomes more than a personal journey. It becomes a quiet critique of how society trains men to fear softness. And then there's the theme of communication in the digital age. The film never leans on texts or social media gimmicks, but the absence of them speaks volumes. This isn't a love story driven by modern apps and quick messages. It's about two people trying to reconnect in a world that makes it easier to swipe away feelings than confront them. Their decision to meet face-to-face, talk it out over coffee instead of through a screen, feels like a statement in itself. Real connection still matters. The film also gently touches on class and creative insecurity. Ethan's art is beautiful, but he's always one step away from financial instability. Ava's career, though successful, comes with its own compromises and loneliness. Their contrasting realities highlight the very real challenge of balancing dreams with survival, especially for artists and emotionally driven people in today's economy. There's no grand monologue about it, but you feel it in the silences between them. The way rent, ambition, failure, and burnout live in the background of every emotional decision. Even the settings contribute to the commentary. The film moves between urban isolation and quiet countryside escape, showing how space, or the lack of it, can either suffocate or heal emotional wounds. These locations aren't just backdrops, they're symbolic of modern emotional states. The city buzzes with distraction and emotional noise, while the countryside offers reflection, stillness, and the kind of solitude that forces truth to surface. Another thread running through the narrative is the generational disconnect. The older characters in the story, like Ava's mother and Ethan's estranged father, represent a mindset that avoids confrontation and buries feelings under politeness or detachment. Their presence adds weight to the idea that the current generation is still dealing with inherited emotional patterns and trying to break them. It's not dramatic or in your face, but when Ava says, "You always told me to be careful what I felt, like feelings were a mess that needed cleaning," it's not just a personal jab, it's a cultural critique. And then there's grief, handled not as a singular event, but as a lingering presence. The film explores how people carry loss, not just of loved ones, but of dreams, versions of themselves, and moments they can't get back. It's a slow, steady theme that reminds you how deeply grief can live in the background of everyday life, shaping the choices you make without you even realizing it. So while I Love You Forever might sell itself as a love story, it's also having a quiet, thoughtful conversation about the world we live in. It doesn't offer neat answers or tidy solutions, but it holds a mirror up to the emotional, social, and cultural truths we often try to ignore. And in doing that, it becomes more than just a film. It becomes a reflection of us. I Love You Forever is the kind of film that doesn't just ask for your attention. It pulls you in emotionally and refuses to let go. From the opening scene, it starts working its quiet magic, and before you know it, you're not just watching Ava and Ethan's story, you're thinking about your own. That's the film's real power. It doesn't rely on explosive twists or gimmicks to keep you engaged. Instead, it invites you into a world of subtle emotional shifts, raw conversations, and those unspoken moments that say more than any dramatic monologue ever could. And once you're in, you're all in. You might not even realize how hard you're gripping your armrest until that one line hits you like a gut punch or a soft memory you didn't expect to resurface. It's a film full of emotional landmines. One moment you're smiling at a throwaway joke between two characters trying to rekindle something lost, and the next you're swallowing hard because someone just said the one thing you've always wanted someone to say to you. The dialogue doesn't go for melodrama, but it's laced with quiet truth bombs that sneak up and wreck you in the best way. Even the silences are loaded. A glance across a dinner table, a pause before a confession, the way someone closes a door too softly, these moments hit home in a way that words sometimes can't. That's when you realize this isn't just a movie for watching, it's a movie for feeling. And oh, it invites discussion, especially after the credits roll. You'll find yourself wanting to dissect every little choice the characters made. Why didn't she answer that message? Was he selfish or scared? Could things have turned out differently if they'd just said what they really meant sooner? It's the kind of film you want to talk about with someone else immediately after watching, whether to argue over a specific scene, defend a character's messy decision, or just sit in stunned silence together because it made you think about something you weren't prepared to confront. It doesn't hand you all the answers, and that's exactly why you'll want to go back and watch it again. There's emotional layering here that only gets richer with repeat viewings. And don't be surprised if it leaves you doing some late-night soul-searching. It's a mirror in motion, asking you quietly but firmly to think about your own choices, who you loved, who you pushed away, and who you might still be carrying in the quiet corners of your heart. It resonates with anyone who's ever had to say goodbye to someone they weren't ready to lose, or who tried to move on from something that never really ended. It's not loud or flashy, but it stays with you. Long after the screen fades to black, the feelings don't. They hang in the air, unspoken but undeniable, echoing in your head like a half-remembered song. So yes, I Love You Forever emotionally connects, and not with cheap tricks, but with honest, lived-in emotion that digs deep. It doesn't just entertain. It lingers. It makes you reflect. It makes you call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. It makes you wonder what love really is when everything else falls away. And that, more than anything, is why people don't just watch it. They experience it. They carry it. When you stack I Love You Forever next to other films in the romantic drama genre, it doesn't just blend in with the crowd. It quietly steps aside and carves its own little emotional corner. At first glance, it might seem like it belongs on the same shelf as The Notebook, La La Land, Before Sunrise, or Marriage Story. You've got a couple with unresolved history, emotionally charged reunions, and the ever-familiar tug-of-war between love and timing. But this film doesn't scream its heartbreak or belt out its emotional crescendos. It whispers them. It leans closer to the bittersweet realism of Blue Valentine, but without the aggressive emotional implosion. It lives in the pauses, the unsaid things, and the delicate tension of maybe, not forever after. Compared to genre staples that thrive on grand gestures, last-minute airport chases, or fate-tied coincidences, I Love You Forever resists all of that. It's more interested in what happens when two people are forced to confront who they were and who they've become, not because destiny brought them back together, but because life isn't done with them yet. That subtle shift makes all the difference. The film rejects glossy fairy tales and embraces emotional honesty. It doesn't want you to believe in magic. It wants you to believe in growth, grief, and the gray areas of love that don't come with clear answers. That alone makes it stand out from most formula-driven romances. Now, if you place this in the context of the director's previous work, let's say their earlier films had more of a polished, dramatic flair with heavier visual metaphors or stylized storytelling. Asterisk, I Love You Forever asterisk feels like a quieter, more mature step forward. It's stripped down but emotionally fuller, a sign of a filmmaker more confident in stillness than spectacle. If their earlier projects leaned on more theatrical structures, this film feels like they've trusted the audience more than ever before. They've let the actors breathe, the scenes stretch, and the emotions simmer. It's the kind of artistic pivot that tells you the director isn't repeating themselves, they're evolving. In terms of narrative beats, yes, it shares some DNA with familiar stories about lost love and second chances. But instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, it retools the rhythm. It's not afraid to slow things down, let the tension build over a long silence or a single touch. In a genre often overstuffed with contrived conflicts or forced misunderstandings, this one gives its characters space to unravel naturally. No overdramatic villainous exes or quirky best friends pushing the story forward. Just two people with a heavy past and the aching question of whether their present can hold what once broke apart. What also sets it apart from many similar films is how much it respects the intelligence of the audience. It doesn't spoon-feed emotion or wrap everything in perfect symmetry. It trusts you to read between the lines, to pick up on the emotional subtext, to catch the meaning behind a passing glance. And that's rare. A lot of romantic dramas go big to be memorable. I Love You Forever goes deep instead. It doesn't throw you into emotional chaos for the sake of it. It gently lowers you in, lets you sink, and leaves you floating in the aftermath, still feeling it all long after. So when it's compared to its peers, this film doesn't shout to be heard. It whispers, and somehow that whisper ends up echoing louder than all the noise around it. It brings something different, not by rejecting what the genre has done, but by refining it. It's not trying to be the next iconic love story, it's trying to be honest. And that honesty might just be the boldest move of all. I Love You Forever is the kind of film where even a glance out the window or the way someone pours their coffee can be loaded with meaning, and that's not by accident. The movie doesn't just tell its story through dialogue. It paints with metaphor, layers its scenes with quiet symbolism, and tucks emotional echoes into everyday details. It's the kind of experience where the more closely you watch, the more you realize it's speaking on two levels, the surface story and a deeper current flowing quietly underneath. One of the recurring metaphors woven into the film is the use of water, rain, rivers, baths, and even a dripping faucet. Water here isn't just aesthetic, it's emotional shorthand. It symbolizes time, memory, and emotional release. Rain falls during moments of confession or revelation, not in the melodramatic sense of sad scene, let's add rain, but in a way that suggests something inside the characters is finally cracking open. There's a riverside scene that plays almost like an emotional reset, the idea that love, like water, can erode, reshape, or wash away. Even the small image of a leaky ceiling in a flashback isn't just about poor plumbing. It's a quiet metaphor for a relationship that was deteriorating in ways no one wanted to admit. Photographs are another key motif, but not in the usual memory box of the past sort of way. Here, they represent how we curate the version of love we want to remember. A photograph may show Ava and Ethan smiling, but the film is more interested in what was going unsaid just before or after the shutter clicked. There's a powerful scene where one of them stares at a photo long enough for you to start wondering if they're seeing the person they loved, or the version of themselves that existed in that moment. It's a gentle but sharp commentary on nostalgia and how we romanticize the parts of love that hurt the least. Another powerful symbol throughout is the motif of doorways. Open doors, closed doors, doors left ajar. It's a quiet but constant visual throughout the film. They don't call attention to themselves, but they become a language of their own. A door left slightly open becomes a symbol of emotional vulnerability. A door shut too quickly signals retreat. A lingering moment in a hallway, with one character standing outside the frame while another waits inside, becomes a visual metaphor for the emotional gap they're trying and failing to cross. Even the act of knocking or hesitating before entering carries weight, speaking volumes about what's left unsaid between these two people. And let's not forget silence itself. It's used with almost poetic precision, not just as a pause in conversation, but as a symbol of distance, discomfort, or deep recognition. There's a dinner scene where barely anything is said, but the clinking of cutlery, the glances, the shifting body language, it all says something. In fact, the absence of sound often becomes more powerful than the presence of music or words. It's the film's way of reminding us that not all truths are spoken aloud. Sometimes the most devastating realizations are the ones we never fully articulate. Even colors have their role. The film's palette shifts subtly depending on emotional temperature. Cool tones dominate in scenes of detachment or distance, while warmer, golden hues sneak in during brief moments of reconnection or vulnerability. A yellow scarf, a warm light in a cold room, or the sudden shift in color during a memory sequence can hit harder than a monologue, simply because it taps into something visual and visceral. It's not just pretty, it's storytelling on a subconscious level. So while I Love You Forever might seem grounded in real, everyday emotional struggles, it's actually rich with metaphorical undercurrents. The symbols don't scream for attention, they sit quietly in the background, waiting for the viewer to notice. And once you do, you start to realize the film isn't just showing you what love looks like, it's showing you what it feels like. Every object, sound, and silence becomes part of the emotional tapestry, turning what might have been a simple story into something layered, intimate, and quietly profound. I Love You Forever may not be part of a sprawling cinematic universe or a numbered franchise, but in many ways, it taps into a long-standing tradition of love stories that try to peel back the layers of human connection rather than just glamorize romance. It carries the DNA of emotionally rich dramas like Blue Valentine, Before Sunrise, or even Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where love isn't just about grand gestures, but the quiet, uncomfortable, breathtaking truths that come with really knowing someone. What makes this film stand out is how it doesn't try to reinvent the genre with flashy gimmicks or exaggerated conflict. It folds itself into a legacy of romantic dramas that aim for honesty and vulnerability, not just happy endings. There's also a historical layer to how it plays with the evolution of modern relationships. It may not be set in a distant era or framed by a particular historical event, but it does feel like a timestamp for this generation, exploring love in the age of shifting values, emotional burnout, and the pressure of curated perfection. There's an undercurrent in the film that suggests the characters are not only fighting for their relationship, but against the cultural noise that surrounds them. It's not the 1950s ideal of marriage, nor the sweeping romance of the 90s. It's intimate, imperfect, and modern, set against a backdrop where time is tight, emotions are messy, and people are learning how to speak their truths without losing each other in the process. Even in the way technology is used, or more importantly not overused, the film quietly pushes back against the trope of digital dependence. You won't find endless texts or social media stalking here. Instead, the absence of those elements becomes a powerful statement. It's a deliberate artistic choice that gives the film a timeless quality while still reflecting the emotional dilemmas of today's world, how we crave connection, how we struggle to communicate, and how memory and longing can sometimes speak louder than any notification ever could. And for those wondering if this film connects to a larger thematic universe, yes, it does, but in a more spiritual sense. It belongs to that quietly growing collection of films that don't just show love, but study it. Films that want to ask, what happens after the spark? What does it mean to choose someone again and again, even when it's hard? It takes the genre seriously, almost academically, dissecting the evolution of a relationship without forgetting to make you feel it. That's what places it in the lineage of great introspective romances, films that don't just leave an impression on the heart, but echo in the mind long after the credits roll. The story behind I Love You Forever isn't one of explosive box office numbers or massive global earnings, but that's where things get interesting. This was never meant to be a traditional theatrical juggernaut. In fact, the film had one of the smallest theatrical releases you'll come across, opening in just a single theater. On its opening weekend, it brought in just over $5,000, and by the end of its run, it had only made around $13,000 total. That's not even popcorn money by Hollywood standards, but don't let the numbers fool you. The real story lies beyond the ticket sales. As for the budget, the filmmakers haven't officially revealed what it cost to make, but judging by the grounded locations, intimate cast, and minimal use of large-scale set pieces or visual effects, it was clearly a low-budget production. Most estimates put it somewhere well under $5 million, possibly even closer to the $1 to $2 million range. But the incredible part is how polished and emotionally potent the film feels despite its humble resources. It's a shining example of how you don't need an inflated budget to create something that hits hard and lingers long after the credits roll. What makes the financial journey of this film unique is how little it relied on traditional marketing. There were no massive trailers dropped during the Super Bowl, no glossy magazine covers, or endless social media countdowns. Instead, the film gained traction through its South by Southwest premiere and gradually built word-of-mouth buzz, particularly among fans of indie cinema who crave emotionally raw storytelling. The limited marketing probably hurt its box office returns, but for those who discovered it, especially online or through streaming platforms, the film made a deeply personal impact. Audience reactions were all over the place. Some viewers were immediately pulled into its raw exploration of modern love and emotional manipulation, while others found it uncomfortable, intense, or even off-putting. But that kind of divisiveness isn't necessarily a flaw. In fact, it's often a sign that a film is doing something bold, something worth talking about. And when a movie generates discussion and provokes genuine reactions, that's a different kind of success. So while I Love You Forever may not have set any financial records, it managed to deliver impressive emotional and artistic value on a tight budget. It's not a commercial win in the traditional sense, but in the realm of indie filmmaking, it stands as proof that small films can still pack a major punch. If you're looking to watch I Love You Forever, the good news is that it's now available across a few convenient platforms, but how you choose to watch it can really shape your experience. First off, yes, the film did have a very limited theatrical release, so limited, in fact, that it opened in just one theater in the United States. So, unless you're lucky enough to stumble upon a local indie cinema or film festival that's showing it, the big screen experience might be a rare find. But that's where home viewing steps in to save the day. Streaming is the most accessible way to experience this emotional roller coaster. The film is currently available on major platforms like HBO Max and Hulu. If you're already subscribed to either, it's as easy as searching and pressing play. These services offer a smooth, high-quality viewing experience that lets you soak in the film's emotional weight from the comfort of your couch. And since this movie thrives on intimate character moments and quiet emotional tension, watching it in a distraction-free environment at home might actually make the experience even more powerful. For those who prefer not to stream or don't have subscriptions, the digital rental route is your best bet. You can rent or purchase the film through services like Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and other digital storefronts. This gives you the flexibility to watch it on your own terms, whether it's late at night with headphones on or curled up under a blanket with no interruptions. If you want to go even more old school, it's worth keeping an eye out for a physical release, though at the moment there's no confirmed DVD or Blu-ray edition. Still, if one does drop in the future, it might come with extra features like director commentary or behind-the-scenes interviews that could add another layer to your understanding of the story. In terms of the best way to watch it for full impact, dim the lights, silence your phone, and really let yourself fall into the film. This isn't a movie to half-watch while scrolling through social media. It asks you to be present, to listen, and to feel. So, wherever you choose to watch it, whether it's a cinema, a streaming service, or a rental, make it count.